everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to get into something I think a lot of us struggle with. I know I do sometimes, and that's figuring out the best way to set up your workspace and actually structure your day when you're freelancing.
It can be tough, for sure.
Yeah, and we've got this super interesting French article that really digs into it, kind of some unexpected practical things.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just like have a desk.
Exactly. I mean, we all know we need a dedicated workspace, right? But this article gets into the psychology of it.
Totally. Like having a dedicated space. It's not just about being physically separate from, your living space. It's like a mental shift too.
Oh, I totally get that. Like
Yeah.
when I step into my office, even if it's just a corner of the room, it's like my brain knows, okay, time to work.
Right. It's like putting on your work uniform, even if that uniform is sweatpants. It's a signal to your brain.
It's so true. When I first started freelancing, I was working from the couch, the kitchen table, even my bed sometimes, and it was a disaster.
Oh, I bet. No boundaries at all.
None. My productivity was all over the place. So I finally carved out this little corner in my living room and made it my dedicated workspace.
And did that help?
It made a huge difference. It's like my brain finally had a place to switch into work mode.
That makes so much sense. And this article also talks about like actual ergonomics, which I know some people roll their eyes at, but
Well, I think it's important. I'll admit I was a little surprised about how specific they got about things like desk depth.
yeah, but when you think about it, it actually makes sense. Like if your desk is too shallow, you're hunched over all the time, which can lead to all sorts of discomfort.
Oh, for sure. And if you're uncomfortable, you're definitely not going to be productive.
Right. You want to be comfortable and relaxed so you can focus on your work. The article also talks about minimizing glare, which can be a real problem, especially if you're working near a window.
Ah, tell me about it. My current setup is basically a glare magnet. I'm always squinting.
Haha. Yeah, I feel that. Glare can strain your eyes and give you headaches, which definitely doesn't help with focus.
So finding that balance between natural light and minimizing glare is key. Now, another thing they emphasized was having a clutter-free zone. I'm a bit of an organized chaos person myself, but is there actually science behind that whole tidy workspace, tidy mind thing?
There is. Studies show that clutter actually competes for your attention.
Really?
Yeah. So when your workspace is cluttered, your brain is constantly bombarded with stimuli, which can lead to mental fatigue and stress.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So a clean desk actually equals a more focused mind. Okay, I'm sold. Any tips for conquering clutter?
Well, the article suggests categorizing documents and creating a system for organizing files so you can easily find what you need.
Makes sense. But what about having inspirational stuff around? I've got all these knickknacks and quotes that I love.
That's where personalization comes in. The article encourages you to make your workspace your own, to surround yourself with things that inspire you.
I love that. It's about finding that balance between function and inspiration. I had a wall dedicated to Tim Burton and Disney artwork for ages.
Yeah.
It always put me in a creative mood.
That's awesome. And speaking of things that inspire us, we can't forget about our tools, right?
Totally. The article talks about investing in quality equipment, and it's not just about having a good computer, is it?
Nope. Things like a good ergonomic chair can make a huge difference in your comfort and productivity.
Ugh, yeah, I've been meaning to get a new chair. My current one is, let's just say it's seen better days.
Haha, I get it. But think of it as an investment in your health and well-being. A good chair can prevent back pain and make you way more comfortable so you can focus better.
I guess you're right. No more excuses. All right, so we've got our dedicated, ergonomic, and clutter-free workspace. What's next?
Well, we got to talk about routine. And this article, right off the bat, debunks a common freelance myth, working in pajamas all day.
Okay, guilty as charged. But you're saying there's more to it than just getting dressed.
Definitely. Having a structured morning routine, even if it's simple, signals to your brain that it's time to switch gears. I'm not a morning workout person, but even just a walk around the block helps me wake up and feel ready to work.
So it's about consistency and finding what works for you. What about managing all the tasks and projects? Things can get overwhelming pretty quickly when you're freelancing.
That's where task planning comes in. The article is all about using a planner or project management tool to stay organized.
I've tried so many different systems, from spreadsheets to sticky notes. It's a constant struggle to wrangle my to-do list. What does the article suggest?
Well, they emphasize the importance of prioritizing tasks, setting realistic deadlines, and tracking your progress. Find a system that works for you and stick with it.
Makes sense. Otherwise, it's easy to get lost in that sea of tasks. But even with the best planning, we all need breaks, right?
Absolutely. The article really stresses the importance of breaks for maintaining focus and productivity.
I used to think pushing through without breaks was the way to get more done, but I learned the hard way that it just leads to burnout.
It's like trying to run a marathon without stopping. You'll hit a wall eventually. Breaks allow your mind to rest and recharge.
This article even suggests doing unrelated tasks for a creative boost, like sketching, even if you're not a designer.
I love that idea. Engaging different parts of your brain can lead to new insights and ideas you wouldn't have had otherwise.
So it's about balance, focused work plus strategic rest. Now, one of the trickiest things about freelancing, I think, is setting boundaries around work hours.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. It's easy to fall into the trap of always being on when your office is at home.
Exactly. How do we set those boundaries when work is always just a few steps away?
The article emphasizes setting firm boundaries and sticking to them as much as possible to protect your work-life balance.
Like creating a mental close sign for your workspace. Even if it's not a physical boundary, it's a signal to yourself and others that you're off the clock. But this article isn't all theory. It actually introduces us to some real freelancers and their approaches.
Yes. We meet Marie, a digital consultant, Thomas, a graphic designer, and Laura, a writer. They each have unique ways of managing their workspaces and time.
Let's start with Marie. I read that she has a morning meditation practice. I've been trying to meditate more, but it's tough to find the time.
Even a few minutes can make a difference. It calms the mind, reduces stress, and improves focus. And you can meditate anywhere, anytime.
That's good to hear. They also mentioned something about Marie using her tea breaks to encourage movement.
Yeah, I love that little detail. She sees her tea breaks as an opportunity to stretch, do some yoga, or just walk around a bit. It's a simple way to incorporate movement into her day.
That's so smart. It's easy to get stuck at our desks for hours. I usually just get up to make more coffee. Maybe I should try taking a walk instead.
There you go. It's all about finding those little things that work for you.
Okay, now Thomas, the graphic designer. He's all about creative breaks. Things like sketching or going for walks to clear his head. I'm definitely more of a doom scrolling kind of person when I take breaks.
Well, mindless scrolling rarely feels truly restorative. Thomas reminds us that breaks should be engaging and help us recharge.
You're right. Maybe I need to try sketching, even though I'm not an artist.
You never know. You might surprise yourself.
And finally, we have Laura, the writer. She works in a co-working space to combat the isolation that can come with freelancing. What are your thoughts on co-working spaces?
They can be great for people who thrive in a more social and collaborative environment. It's like having colleagues without the office politics.
That's a good point. It's like having a built-in community and support system.
Right. And for some people, that can be a game changer. So we've covered workspace setup, routines, the importance of breaks, setting boundaries. It's a lot to think about.
It is. But this French article, even though it seems simple on the surface, it really makes you think about the bigger picture.
It's like it's subtly hinting at this deeper theme about mindset.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
Like it's not just about having the right desk or planner. It's about cultivating a mindset that supports focus, productivity, and well-being.
So it's about creating an environment that works for you both physically and mentally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being mindful of your energy levels, taking breaks when you need them, setting boundaries to protect your well-being. It's all connected.
It's about finding that sweet spot between productivity and self-care, which is honestly something I'm always working on. This deep dive has given me so much to think about. I'm already brainstorming ways to improve my own workspace and routine.
That's great to hear. Remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
You know, it's amazing how this article about workspace and time management has led us to this deeper conversation about mindset and well-being.
It really highlights how interconnected those things are, especially for freelancers and remote workers who often face unique challenges with boundaries and self-care.
When your home is your office, it's so easy for those lines to blur.
That's why having that dedicated workspace, even if it's just a corner of a room, is so important. It creates a separation between work and personal life.
It's about finding that balance so you can be fully present in both realms. This deep dive has been really eye-opening. I'm inspired to make some changes.
Awesome. Remember, it's a journey, not a destination. And even small steps can make a difference.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a challenge. Think about one specific thing you can do this week to improve your workspace or routine.
It could be decluttering your desk, getting a new chair, scheduling breaks, or even just being more mindful of your mindset.
The important thing is to take action even if it's a small step.
Because those small steps, taken consistently, can lead to significant transformations.
We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into this fascinating French article. But for now, we want to hear from you.
What resonated with you most from today's discussion?
Have you tried any of these tips before?
What's that one small change you're going to implement this week?
Share your experiences and tips with us on social media, and let's keep this conversation going.
Remember, knowledge is most powerful when it's shared and applied.
Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep. So before we jump to the break, we were talking about co-working spaces and how they can be great for combating that isolation feeling that some freelancers struggle with.
Yeah, they can be a great way to connect with others and feel like you're part of a community.
But I've always wondered, are there any downsides to co-working spaces? Like, could they be too distracting for some people?
That's a really good point. I mean, for some people, being around other people, even if they're working, can be a total productivity killer.
Right. Like, I know I definitely need a certain level of peace and quiet to really focus.
Yeah, it totally depends on your personality and your work style. Some people thrive in that kind of bustling environment, while others need more solitude.
This article really drives home the point that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to freelancing. What works for one person might be a disaster for another.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so great to see how these different freelancers have adapted their workspaces and routines to fit their individual needs.
Speaking of those different freelancers, I wanted to circle back to Marie, Thomas, and Laura. We touched on them briefly before, but I'm curious to dig a little deeper into their specific strategies.
Yeah, me too. They each have some really unique approaches that I think our listeners could learn from.
Let's start with Marie, the digital consultant. We talked about how she uses tea breaks to encourage movement throughout the day. The article actually gives a little more insight into her strategy.
Oh, yeah. She's got a really interesting perspective on it. It's not just about taking a break from work. It's about using that break to intentionally move her body and clear her head.
I love that. It's so easy to just sit at your desk for hours on end and forget to move. I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are. But, like Marie, we can make a conscious effort to incorporate more movement into our days, even if it's just a few minutes at a time.
I'm thinking I might try swapping out my afternoon coffee for a walk around the block.
That's a great idea. Fresh air and sunshine can do wonders for your energy levels and focus.
Now, Thomas, the graphic designer, really stood out to me because of his approach to creative breaks. He's all about sketching or going for walks to refresh his mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful strategy. Engaging in creative activities, even if they're not directly related to your work, can help you approach problems from a fresh perspective.
It's like giving your brain a break from the logical, analytical stuff and allowing it to tap into something more intuitive and playful.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be sketching. It could be anything that sparks your creativity and brings you joy.
Like, what are some other examples of creative breaks that people could try?
Hmm. Let's see. You could try listening to music, playing an instrument, writing in a journal, dancing, gardening, cooking, or even just spending time in nature. It's really about finding what works for you and what helps you feel refreshed and inspired.
I love that. So many possibilities. And then there's Laura, the writer who works in a co-working space. We talked about how co-working spaces can be great for community and combating loneliness. But what if you're someone who thrives in solitude?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not everyone is a social butterfly, and that's
Yeah.
totally okay. The beauty of freelancing is that you have the flexibility to create an environment that suits your personality and your needs.
So how can freelancers who prefer to work alone still cultivate a sense of community and connection?
Well, there are a ton of online communities and forums for freelancers in just about every industry. It's a great way to connect with people who understand the unique challenges and rewards of freelancing.
That's true. And even just scheduling regular virtual coffee dates with other freelancers can help you stay connected and feel less isolated.
Yeah, and don't forget about attending industry events or conferences. Even if you're not the most extroverted person, those kinds of gatherings can be a great way to meet new people and expand your network.
This deep dive has been so insightful. It's made me realize that there's so much more to freelancing than just having the right tools and the right workspace. It's about creating a holistic environment that supports your well-being, your creativity, and your productivity.
Couldn't agree more. It's about finding that sweet spot where you can do your best work while also feeling energized and inspired.
So before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I wanted to take a moment to hear from our listeners. What are some of the biggest challenges you face when it comes to setting up your workspace and managing your time as a freelancer?
And what are some of your favorite tips and tricks for staying focused, motivated, and productive? We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.
Feel free to share your insights on our social media channels. We're always looking for new ideas and perspectives.
And remember, we're all in this together. Freelancing can be a challenging but incredibly rewarding journey, and it's always helpful to learn from and support each other.
We'll be back soon to wrap up our exploration of this insightful French article. But for now, we encourage you to take some time to reflect on what we've discussed so far.
Think about your own workspace and routines. What's working well for you?
And what could use a little tweaking.
Remember, even small changes can make a big difference in your overall well-being and productivity.
Stay tuned for more insights and actionable tips in the final part of our deep dive. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this awesome French article about designing the perfect freelance day. It's kind of wild how much ground we've covered, from setting up your workspace to really digging into that whole mindset thing.
I know, right? It all ties together in such interesting ways.
It really does. As we've been talking, I keep coming back to this idea of intentionality. It seems like the freelancers who are really killing it are the ones who are super intentional about how they approach their work.
Totally. They don't just wing it. They've really thought about what they need to thrive, and they've set up their work lives accordingly.
Yeah. They've created systems and routines that support their goals and values. And it's not just about following someone else's rules, it's about figuring out what works best for you.
Exactly. It's about self-awareness, experimentation, and being willing to adjust as you go.
It's a process. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've talked about a lot of different strategies, everything from ergonomics to creative breaks to setting boundaries. But ultimately, it all boils down to this. What does your ideal freelance day look like?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. And there's no single right answer. It's about what works best for you, your personality, your work style, your goals.
So close your eyes for a second and really picture it.
What time do you wake up?
What does your morning look like?
Where do you work?
What tools do you use?
When do you take breaks?
And most importantly, how do you make sure you're not only productive, but also happy and fulfilled?
Once you have that vision, even if it's just a rough sketch, start taking small steps to make it a reality.
You don't have to change everything overnight. Just pick one thing and focus on that.
And don't forget to celebrate your wins along the way.
Yes. Acknowledge your progress and give yourself credit for the effort you're putting in.
We'd love to hear about your journey. What are some of the things you're doing to design your ideal freelance day?
Share your experiences with us on social media.
And let's keep this conversation going.
Remember, knowledge is most powerful when we share it and apply it.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep into all the things that make freelancing awesome.